Hi, Tiara. It's really good to see you.
Yeah, I'm glad we get into talk another time.
Yeah, me too. I'm sorry that it didn't work out last time.
It's kind of funny when you told me it didn't work out. I don't know. I was kind of laughing. I was like, because we was like struggling so hard to like find out which platform, and then we finally went with that for it to not work. It's like, wow. So it ended up just being a conversation, to be honest. I feel like sometimes when something doesn't work out the first, we still have like that kind of feeling of if it doesn't work out, it's okay because it crashed and burned the first time. So if
Yeah.
it happens this time, I won't go in it so attached to it in a way.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I really like that perspective and still recognizing on some level there is a little bit of a loss,
Mm.
right? And it's okay to recognize that. And it's okay to say, okay, there's a loss, but it doesn't traumatize us, right? I mean, something like that.
I learn from it and grow from it and realize that I don't know. I feel like especially with art, I feel like there's such a we talked about this last time, such a feeling of I don't want to mess it up.
Yeah.
So and when you do mess it up, and it's kind of like if you go to worst case scenario, in that instance, the sculpture fell apart. That's kind of worst case scenario. And it's like, okay, how do I fix this? Whether you start all the way over or you try to piece it back together, how do you problem solve to like fix that scenario? And you ended up creating another piece that ended up being better.
Mm-hmm.
So not really, it's a loss, but you learned from it and was better because of it.
Yeah, it's really true. And the whole idea of time, the time that we take to do certain things, it's easy, maybe if something doesn't work out, it's easy to quickly go, oh my God, I wasted all that time. But the truth is, we really didn't. Yeah.
How much you waste is time that you didn't. I feel like if you don't reflect on, like, okay, you wasted the time because it came out so ugly. But then I feel like the time is only wasted if you try to recreate that same exact image and it comes out the same, like, you don't like it, but it's only because you didn't. Why didn't I like this first image and how can I make something better than that? If you don't like reflect in a way and see how to make something better, that's when I see the time is wasted. But the
Yeah.
constant wasting time is also like I don't want to say like capitalism, but it's like everything is put time is money. So it's
Yeah.
like all of this time I'll waste. You don't think about you learning it or you growing from it. You think about I could have spent that time doing something else. I could have spent that time like at work. I could have spent it making something better so that I could sell it. So it's like the time being worth something for you to learn from it doesn't seem as valuable as time being put into something to like sell it. So that's
That's a
kind of
great
like
point. It's a really good point. Wow, it just reminds me of, so yeah. So let's talk about how we know each other real briefly and then some things that are related to that. So you can just keep talking, or how we met,
mm,
what you learned there and, at where we met and your time in that college and just anything that's related to that. And then we'll move on to the next.
so we met. I can't even remember like how much like time has passed since I was like at Mountain View. Like when did I always have like this, like somebody will ask me when did you start painting? I was like maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. Like the timeline is kind of like, because I feel like I was at Mountain View for like, I know people normally say it for like maybe 3 years. It's kind of like when you try to. I think I might have was there for 2.5, maybe 3 years. Um, so I know we met at some time. I was there for like maybe a year and a half before I ended up meeting you because I think I met you at the same time I was taking my first like painting class there because I was like, it has all this art stuff in Mountain View, which I kind of didn't really know about it before because I didn't know to look for it, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Like at Mountain, I feel like at the community colleges, there's always like this push of like not practical classes, but like the base classes like history, math, like biology, like all of those kind of classes where the other like the electives, I was like, oh, you can actually like paint here, and they like actually you how to paint, and I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. So I know we met around that time, and they like had the work study as an offer, and I was like, work study, but I could work in this gallery space, so I thought that was really cool just because you would always go to like, okay, a gallery or a museum, and it always feels kind of standoffish because, okay, you can't touch the art, okay, you can't have a backpack, okay, you can't walk. Like, you can't like have these certain things. Like, you can't just, it feels more formal to go inside of that space because you can have these things that can ruin this a few $1,000 like artwork. So it's kind of like, let me walk carefully, let me not get too close. And then there's the element of somebody watching you, but don't touch that. It's like, even if you weren't going to touch it, they kind of like assume that you are because they kind of think you're not supposed to be in that space in a way. So when I had the opportunity to be in that gallery space and seeing that as, it's like, oh, okay, this is a job. Like, somebody like works here, and it's like, you have to do it office hours, and you have to set up a show, you have to take it down. Like, it has all this stuff that went into it that I kind of didn't really think about before as that's being somebody's like day job, if that makes sense. So I know at this time I had a class with Professor Medina, and I know she was telling me about her undergrad and how she was kind of deciding what she wanted to do. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll be an art professor, painting professor. That seems kind of cool. I could make art and I could be a professor. And then I saw the gallery director position. I was like, oh, I could be a gallery director. So it's like having these different like art type of careers that I didn't really think about before. Besides like a graphic designer, it's kind of what I was kind of like really like not consumed with, but that's kind of what I was thinking about. I'll be a graphic designer because I can be creative and have a job.
Yeah.
So I think I had talked to you, or I had gave you this thought about how things need to be accessible, or some things aren't accessible for certain people. So I feel like being at Mountain View and then seeing, well, for Professor Medina, a minority, like woman being a professor or being in that space, and then a woman being in the space of a gallery director is kind of like, oh, this is something that I could do that I didn't think about before because I didn't realize that this was something that people did besides somebody who's uncle or dad or somebody who already had somebody in a position and they kind of were groomed to that. That's kind of that gallery work was. It's like, oh yeah, my dad worked for such and such for 25 years and now I'm an intern and I'm going to New York to do this. And it's like, it feels very kind of exclusive. So to see that in that space, which the space was Mountain View, and it had a whole like section, it didn't feel like tacked on at the end. It felt like it was a part of the environment. Because in some places it has like a gallery or like an art space, and it's kind of like an add-on, kind of like to the side. Nobody knows where it is. It's kind of hard to get to, like a closet or something. But the space at Mountain View, it feels very like inclusive. It's like you can walk past it all the time. It's kind of like right there. So I feel like that's another thing that's kind of important about the space, is that it's right there.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about your time, just briefly, in your classes at Mountain View, in your art classes especially. Just how, what the value was, what you learned, and things like that.
I feel like with the classes that I did take at Mountain View, it really did, I feel like it really did, like, for the professors, they taught me the basics in the efficient way, if that makes sense. Like before, okay, you have a school, like you have a class at like middle school or something, and you have like, I want to take an art class. And they're like, okay, well, shade this. It's a ball. You have to do the 7 shades. It's like, okay. And it's kind of like, that's as far as it goes. As far as like Mountain View, it's like, I learned things that I didn't really know to apply to artwork in a way. Like we've learned about chromatic grays. I was like, what is a chromatic gray? What is that? And these different techniques that you learn from basics. And I feel like it's really important to just have that as a young artist. Because as young artists, they're kind of like pulling from strings, go to YouTube for tutorials or like little workbooks. And we kind of don't have that kind of streamline of building blocks. With the curriculum at Mountain View, it's like, okay, first we're gonna do black and white, then we're gonna do, like, you do line, shape, form. Like you kind of start off small, and some students feel like it was kind of boring because it's like, why are we still doing this? But if you actually do like put the effort in to like learn how to like shade, then the building blocks for when you start adding color and everything else to it is really, you can see the difference. So I feel like, especially with, I think it was, and then again, I feel like the professors at Mountain View are kind of like diverse in their teaching styles. Because I'll say for Professor Medina, she was a more, I would kind of feel like she was more technical in the way of, like if I was doing a portrait, she'd be like, okay, well, this needs to be adjusted, this needs to be adjusted. Think about like color choices, and because I was working in like, what is it called? Like complementary colors a lot. And she was like, okay, well, think about this, think about this. And I know when I took a class with Professor Behan, I think I told you this last time, how he would like talk about everybody's work. And it's not that he was wrong. The way he would say it would be kind of like, to me, it would be kind of funny. So I was like, dang, he really said that. But sometimes it can be helpful. Like for me, he said my stuff was boring a lot. And I was just like, boring. I didn't really take offense to it because I was like, okay, this is a class. So I'm here to learn. And if I want to make something that I like, I can make it outside of the classroom setting. So like, okay, it's boring. How do I fix it? He was like, well, I don't know, but you need to do something. I was just like, was teaching me how to like problem solve. So if I looked at it that way, I could have looked at it like, okay, he's just being mean. But I kind of took it as a way like, okay, well, how can I make this better? I guess it is kind of boring. How can I make it a better picture or a better image? And I'll say for Professor Behan, he was a little bit more, I would say experimental. Like he'll say, put a line through the middle. And it's like, okay, I did it. He's like, yeah, that looks worse, but you should fix it. It's like, huh? Like I should fix it, but you told me to do it. So it's like, he always said that you could do whatever since it is your piece, but he would give you suggestions. And I feel like his suggestions were mostly like how to problem solve. If something is wrong with the piece, then you fixing it will make it that much better because it gave you an issue to resolve instead of you just attacking and finishing it very streamlined. So those two, I feel like it was like a contrast, but I feel like they were both helpful in their own ways. So
yeah, it sounds like it a lot. So I remember now the last time I was very curious, but I know you already answered it, but we're gonna act like you didn't. I don't know. Why painting? What is paint to you? Like, why did you land in a place where right now you're using paint and painting on paper and canvas?
Let me answer this question like I didn't answer it before because I don't want to try to remember what I said before. Because first, when I was younger, I would always like sketch and draw with like charcoal. Like when I would charcoal, because I didn't really see charcoal as a medium until I got to like Mountain View and I was introduced to like oil pastels and chalk pastels. I was like, oh, what is this stuff? I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I wouldn't have got that myself because I was like, I don't know how to use this. I don't feel like learning. So for me, the learning curve was always something that was off-putting. So when I went to Mountain View, the first art class I took, I didn't start off with basics because I was like, this, like, you know, it's kind of boring. I don't want to learn how to draw. I already know how to draw, which I thought. But taking a painting first, I was like, oh, obviously it was hard because I was really trying to be like realistic and I was really like holding on to that rope of if I know how to paint this exactly how it looks and I know how to paint, then I'm really good. So I was really focused on making it look like what it did look like. And after I did that, I was like, oh, well, painting's not as hard as I thought. Like I could kind of like get better. And that's kind of like what my mindset was. And before when I tried to paint by myself, like at home, I just didn't know what I was doing, so I would stop. So the painting class kind of helped me to keep doing it. And how I feel about painting is it always feels like this very, not snobby, but like a profession of only like a select few can like do that. So it feels like if you think about painting, you think of this kind of like refined like art person who's not smarter than everybody else, but it feels like they know more because how can you be a painter and you don't have like a job that somebody would be regular or like you have to like not only think and be smart, but you have to be able to show us visually why you can do that specific thing. It feels very, it just feels exclusive and it feels not rich, but it just feels how I was talking earlier about a museum space. It feels like very like, oh wait, this costs a couple $1,000. This is 10,000. Like, what? It's something I don't know about it. Like, it feels kind of mysterious in a way.
Mm.
And as I was painting and like started to see like art history type of things, it's like, oh, it's only like these like type of people who this has been afforded to. Like, I'm only seeing like this specific like lens. Like, if you go back and well, not even that far, but you see like most of the art like greats and all these art eras and movements, it's like, oh, it's showing this particular like image. Like, of course it's different. Impressionism looks very different than Baroque, but it's kind of like, if you look at the imagery, it's kind of like the same type of person, the same type of, it's rendered differently, but it's the same story. And as I was like making images, I wasn't thinking about that at first. I was just thinking about making a picture. But more recently, I've been thinking about kind of like the way of deconstructing that idea of it being so, uh, is it elusive or just so far-fetched? Like, if I go to a museum now, Dallas Museum of Art, and I go to like a certain floor, it's gonna be these grand frames and this very grand image. It's like, okay, it's kind of off-putting. It's like, okay, that's not for me. And it's kind of it feels really disconnected with my work. I've been thinking about how to make it accessible, but still, it is a piece of art, but it's something that you could kind of feel. You don't feel afraid to get close to it and look at what's there, instead of, well, let me stay 10 feet away so I don't accidentally. It's still a precious thing, but it's not this like a pearl necklace that's very fragile in a sense. Mm-hmm. And I like with painting that it's a physical form of art, like something contrasted to digital, or even like a graphite pencil. Like, you can't really erase it. You can paint over it, but it's not something that you can erase. So I like the physicalness of it, the layers, the tooth of the canvas reacting with the paint, and how those two things like just work with each other. I like the fact that it's an object. So like with digital work, how I was thinking about graphic design, it's kind of like, okay, it's an image with pixels on the screen. With this, it's not printed out. It's something that I made and I went back and forth with it. So it's something that's not like a sculpture, but it's similar to that, because it's just like a physical, whether it's wrapped on canvas or a loose canvas or paper, it's a physical object. And I'm just interested in having that in place, whether it's on a wall or, I don't know.
I think the next thing that I really want to talk about is the jump from, what you're saying about the physicality of the piece to your aesthetic choices. And that is including your makeup today. So I just think it is so unique and beautiful and interesting. And you made that choice for today. So do you mind talking about that first, at least for what you've done to your face, and then jump into your paintings?
I don't mind at all. So my makeup is always kind of like, I don't want to say trial and error, but whenever I try to do something, like, you look at all these makeup tutorials, and for some reason, I'm not really good with like following those. So with my makeup, I always go in with an idea, and it's not really executed how I think it would be, but I end up kind of like just playing around with it to make it work. This was kind of simple because I just put the little green dots. Like, green is my favorite color. Originally, I was gonna do blue, but as I was mixing the colors, I was like, actually, green would be good today. So I feel like with my makeup and like with my art, it's kind of, I'll say it's kind of connected, because whenever somebody like sees my art, they was like, oh wow, that looks like you. And it's been described as like whimsical, or kind of like another world in a way. Mm-hmm. And I feel like makeup also is kind of connected with that, like this idea of like a fairy, or this kind of like mythical type of thing. Like, I used to do gold freckles and stuff, so it'll be kind of like this. It's like this, like, I'm this canvas, or I'm this person or this thing, and the things we wear is kind of like how people perceive us. So how do we want to be perceived? Whether it's art, how do you want your art to come across? Do you want it to come across as very refined and rich looking? Do you want it to be minimalism? Do you want it like, how do we want these things to like come across? And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I've been molding that kind of slowly in a sense. Like I'll try different things, and obviously the things that we don't like, we kind of leave them, and the things we do like, we just do them more often. So I don't remember my makeup. I just like having like the balance. Like I don't know why I just put this one in the middle. It's kind of like the balance. I always think about like art elements. So I was like, I need a triangle. I kind of need like a small triangle somewhere. I like threes. I kind of need a three, but I don't know. It's just like having that idea of being something more than what we actually are. Like I remember having a lecture in an art class, and it was like art history, and the professor described, I think it was Baroque, the people being more than people, or more human than human in a sense. It's like, maybe it wasn't Baroque, it was like the Greeks, how they had this idea of the athletic body being the best body, and how to make this like to make the muscles more defined, make the people more taller, make everything more sculpted. So it's a human, but more human. It's just better. So like this idea of putting on makeup and kind of being like a human, but more mythical, more like what is that? It's kind of what I've been thinking about recently. Like with my work, what I've really been focused on is like having that feeling of something, instead of it being like, I'm not focused on hyperrealism or making this portrait exactly like this person I see. It's more exactly what I feel that I see, if that makes, like, it'll be this person and his eyes are like really, it has like a glimmer of it, and it's like, it's not something that you kind of just see if you're taking a picture of them, but you could kind of see this person. It's like they look a little bit mischievous, and that's something that maybe you can grab and put into a painting that you couldn't grab as easily and put it in like a photography. And with I want it to be accessible to people. I don't want people to be scared to look at it, or to go up to it, or to read the little words I have into it. I want it to be accessible, that you feel like you're not afraid to get close to it. Like, it's this artist, Jonathan Lyndon Chase, and his work is very like, he renders his figures very simplistic, and it's like almost like not a child's drawing, but it's very like simplistic and very efficient. And you can look at it and kind of connect to it easier. That's why I want people to be able to connect to the work and not feel afraid to dive in deeper. So like with the noodle arms that I've been doing recently, it's kind of like, I tell people that if you think about how it feels to hug someone that you haven't seen for a long time, but you really miss this person, and you just like, you don't want this particular moment of when you go in for a hug and hug them to end. How does that feel to have your arms wrapped around this person? Whether they're hugging you back or not, you feel that too. How did that feel that they didn't hug you back and you had your arms wrapped around and kind of just laid your head on their shoulder? How did that moment, that kind of snapshot of a moment feel? Because with my work, that's kind of like what I pull from. How did something, when I went to like this fast food place, and like during Corona, and it's very busy, but like to be people allowed in the lobby. So how does that feel to have something like really fast paced, but it's not a long line how you're used to, because we can't have long lines. So how did that moment feel? So that's what I've really been focused on lately. And just, I'm not trying to convince you that this image that I've rendered is like a real life like snapshot. Like, I'm not trying to convince you like this came from the heavens and this is a perfectly rendered cloud and it's just like you could step into it. Maybe you feel like you could step into it, but it's not something that you're going to see in real life. But it might be something that you feel like you have seen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, what I understand you're talking about, it's not about illustration. You're not trying to illustrate something. What artists can do is we have the liberty to utilize our materials to express something beyond what is exactly right in front of you, right? And that's what you're talking about doing. So what I'm going to do, with this video is I will edit in some images of your work, which, you know, you'll send me some photos of that. And so could you think through your work that you did, say some of the paintings maybe that are in the permanent art collection, and talk about where those ideas came from, what the imagery came from in your color choices and things like that, up to, I guess you've already mentioned the one that was in the show in California, but it'd be good to talk about that show as well later on. So can you do that?
Let's see. Oh, those paintings. I don't know why it feels like I painted those like in a permanent collection so long ago.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like it was like, I feel like, I guess it was just last year that I painted that, probably like spring of last year, but it feels like about like 2 or 3 years ago that I painted it. Those pieces, if you think about like Alone is a piece where it's like a figure is kind of laying, and then it has like a lot of stuff going on in the background of it. And with that piece, I was still using complementary colors, but I was like experimenting with what does it mean for, like, can people feel the energy that I put into it? And that piece, I kind of wanted to, I wanted the name of the piece to also like be included with the piece. So if you think alone and you look at it, it's like, well, she is alone, but what's all this stuff going on? And it's kind of like having that feeling of you being alone, even though there's chaos around you, maybe there's other people around you, but you still feel, you have this very lonely feeling of quietness where you can't, like, even it's a type of depression, like you can't really move or do anything, but you have all this stuff swirling around, all these thoughts, all this energy, but you still are kind of like silent and like vertical, like you're just, I don't know, you're just laying there. And with that, I was just like experimenting with mark making that piece, and I made that in Professor Behan's class. And I remember he was like, more, just put more. And I was like, where else can I fit it? He was just layer. I was like, okay. Oh my gosh. But yeah, with that piece, I wanted to capture that moment of being alone or being lonely. And like when you're quiet and somebody asks, well, what's wrong? It's like, but you do have things maybe you don't want to talk about it. Maybe you don't feel like articulating it, but you still feel it. And another piece, I'll say a part, with that piece, I was thinking about a relationship and how it feels to be, I've addressed this recently actually. It's like how it feels to be, you're kind of physically close and you're in this same space, but you're still apart in a sense. And with that piece, I feel like it had like a fabric in the background, and that kind of connected to two figures, as well as like the unfinished like underpainting of a hand or arm reaching for the other one, and it's reaching for something that's not completely there, if that makes sense, because the arm wasn't finished, but the figures were still reaching for each other. So it's like, how does it feel to reach for something that's not there, something you can't grasp? And I feel like recently with a piece I did this year, I guess I'll say just it's only a year later. It's called Forever, a short forever. So it's like, how does it feel again to be with this person, and then you kind of have that anticipation of something ending or something. You have the anticipation of the end or uncertainty. And how does it feel to be with somebody physically? You're intertwined, but you're still like mentally apart in a sense. So I feel like the one that I executed more recently was done, I don't say it was done better, but I learned more about what the environment does for a piece. With the first piece, it was kind of like, okay, two figures, they're together in this lens, in this picture plane, but it's like, it's just them and then fabric, and then the two like separating colors. But the piece I did more recently is like, okay, these two figures are kind of interacting a little bit more. There's a little bit of environment. You can kind of see what their personality is, like the objects that are placed in the picture plane. And that's kind of when, like, I've been working a little bit with what do objects mean for people? What does clothing mean for people? What hairstyle or piercings or makeup? How do we start to take these things to people? And what does it mean? So That's what I've been thinking about a little bit more recently. Even with the piece, what is it called? How can I not even remember the name of my own work? It's it was all good. It was, and then it was good. Is that what
Yes.
it's? And then it was good.
Yes.
Um, that piece, I feel like I really felt my style change. That
Yeah.
was summer 2019, and I was really I was having a hard time at the beginning because like before that I was just doing complementary colors like blue and orange. When I did that piece, that wasn't working. And I really was like hating the process. I was like, okay, this is ugly. It's like usually I like painting, but this time I'm not feeling it at all. Like I kind of just want to like you want to slash a painting or like a canvas. That's how I was feeling in that moment. So I was just thinking like, okay, how can I make this better? How can I fix this? Obviously, I'm having a problem because this nothing is working. So how do I fix this? And I ended up getting like some neon, like brightly colored paint, and I didn't mix any paint. I just put it on a canvas, and I was like, okay, well, this is looking a little bit like interesting. Maybe I like this a little bit. And as I kept working, I ended up like making something that I liked. And with that piece, I was kind of diving into um, how figures interact still, but how do they interact in that particular case? I was thinking about okay, like a mall space. I was thinking about how did it feel when I was a kid and I was walking in the mall and I wanted candy and my mom was like, well, why do you need candy right now? You just ate, we're gonna eat. It's like, but please, I just want some of those gumballs, please, please, please. And it's like a child kind of pointing and gesturing to like, please, I want some candy. And a mom, maybe she looks in her purse like, okay, I don't have change for that. Let's go. And um, I like that piece because it's a diptych, so it's like two sides. So it's like two stories, but they're kind of placed together. So um, two different just images, but still working and talking to each other. So yeah.
So you're really describing what happens when a person learns and grows from the process that they're learning and growing from. It's really very clear, and it's very exciting to see that happen. So now you're at UTA. Well, I don't know, not now, but you know, that was your next step. So maybe just talk briefly about things that you've gotten from being there so far, or being part of that university.
I'll say with going to UTA or I don't know. I feel like going with any like university and like you look up the professors beforehand, kind of see what they've done in the art community or what they're currently doing, and it's kind of exciting because you think you're working with okay, like, this person has been in this gallery, this gallery, this gallery. They've done this, this, and this, and then I'll say it's kind of intimidating a little bit. And then when you get there, it's like, oh, okay, like I kind of know some stuff. Like it's not as intimidating as I thought because I kind of know more than I thought
Mm-hmm.
with that space, I was really, I remember I really wanted to work with Cedric Huckabee because I seen his paintings. I was like, that's gonna be perfect for me. I like doing portraits. He does portraits. He's gonna teach me so much. And then first semester, and I didn't get a class with him. I was like, dang, I was so disappointed. I was like, okay, I guess I'll just wait till next semester to get this professor that I want to really work with. And I ended up working with another professor for my painting class, and I wasn't expecting to because I didn't read about. I thought I had to read about the professors to know exactly what I was getting into. But this professor really taught me, Benjamin Terry. He taught me a lot just because I feel like he was a little bit similar to like Professor Behans in the way that it was kind of like experimental and it kind of made you think about painting not as I'm trying to recreate this photograph. I'm trying just think about it as like deconstructed. This is a canvas. You're putting paint on top of it. You're putting glitter on top of it. You've made this like frame for it to go around. So it's like think of it as not as a photograph that's on the wall, but think of it as it's an object. It's something that we hang or it's something that we prop. And I think from his class, it kind of I would say like loosen the reins or like the leash that was kind of on that I had on painting before that it has to be this particular idea, but it can be this with an alcove, like it can be this as well. So I feel like with his class, it kind of helped me like loosen the ideals that I had about painting before, which were kind of restrictive, which I think it's easy to get in that way with art.
Mhm.
Even like with sculptures, like sometimes you want to do mixed media, but you still feel like maybe, okay, it has to be this thing. Like with
Mhm.
painting, can a painting be a bed that you painted? It's like, well, that's more like a sculpture, but it's like, I don't know, how do we define these things, and does that really matter in the grand scheme of things? It's still like a work of art. So I won't say I had like a bad experience with any of my professors. But I try to go into everything kind of open about what can I learn from somebody, even if I don't like their art style, what can I learn to pull from that and then leave what I don't particularly like. I'll say the difference with being at a university versus Mountain View is just how much bigger the space is.
Mm.
I remember getting lost like the first like couple weeks or like the first week on campus. I would just get lost because Mountain View, you could walk class to class. At UTA, I had some classes like in the art history building, but that's over here. You have to drive to come to like the studio classes. So the fact that it was so much bigger was kind of something to get used to. And I feel like the workload was just heavier.
Mhm.
And so when I was at Mountain View, I had to take I had to take a regular history class, I had to take like a math class, and then like maybe I'll take a elective that'll be painting or drawing. And I think the most art classes I took at one time at Mountain View was 2.
Mhm.
But at UTA, once you decide your major of like art, you have to take at least 3 studio classes and then like art history. So I said 3 art studio classes. I was like, this is so much. I ended up getting used to it, but that's kind of like the degree plan. That's kind of how the classes are stacked, just so you can finish like on time.
Mhm.
But realizing like how much effort had to go in each class, it's like you can't not do work for this class and just give them a sketch. Like you have to make a full project, but you also have to make a full project for this class. And if you slack in one, then obviously your grades will reflect that. So learning how to balance all the classes and not spend too much time in one was like something I had to learn. Because obviously I'm gonna want to spend all my time in a painting class, but I had printmaking that I had to like divide time up to as well. So time management, had to learn some of that, and I don't know, concepts and everything. I learned that your brain can like do workouts. So
Mhm. So did you start last fall and then you started the spring and then COVID, is that right?
mm, oh
So how did that affect you, that spring semester?
yes, fall. I thought fall was hard because it was my first time at UTA, first time at a university. I was like, this is so difficult. How am I doing this? And then and I also had to go through a thing called CPR, which is the concentrated portfolio review, where basically they tell you if you're going to be accepted into whatever program you go to or not, which I was trying to get accepted into the painting program. So that was already stressful because everybody made a big deal about it. I was like, bro, I didn't know I had to do this so soon. I ended up passing it, but I was stressed out like the weeks before, like a couple weeks before. So I got through fall semester, spring semester. I was like, okay, I got 12 classes. I'm handling it. And then it was spring break, and I was trying to like catch up on my paintings. Or I was catching up on schoolwork, but then in the middle of like spring break, I was like, okay, it's gonna be extended for 2 weeks. Spring break was extended for 2 weeks for what? We didn't really weren't aware of how like serious it was and how much like things were gonna slow down or stop because it's like never really happened before. So they're not gonna stop school for the rest of the semester for what? And then they ended up not stopping it, but like completely just revising how they were gonna attack everything. And it was a struggle for me because a lot of the things that I did were on campus. So it's like you have a library on campus. If you need any resources, you can kind of go there. If you need to use a computer, printer, all this kind of stuff, you can go there. Where at home, like I don't really have a computer easily that I can use to write papers and type up art statements and all this kind of stuff. So it was very much a challenge doing that. And it was also a challenge to learn how the professors wanted you to send the work in. Like sometimes like the internet at home would be kind of if you like the connection would be the strongest, and then submitting a test or different like projects online was kind of like just an issue. And just thinking about creatively how to make art, it was just a whole nother thing because a lot of stuff was left in the studio and nobody could get access to the studio because the professors couldn't get access and the students couldn't get, they locked everything down. So how do you think about revising your whole like art plan from the beginning where you think about your statement of intent? Okay, I'm gonna make 8 paintings. They're gonna be 3x4. They're gonna be about this topic, this topic, this topic. Here are my sketches for each one. And then, okay, well, you don't have any of the canvases you made. They're locked in the studio. You don't have any of the paint you made. You don't have a sketchbook that had the sketches that you made. So you still have to complete this amount of work. So how do you do that while at home, having all these distractions? Like for me, my house is it can be chaotic just because I have 5 siblings. So how can I work when I have, hey Titi, what you doing? Oh, painting still? Okay, can I show you something? Mama said that you have to come wash the dishes, so can you come downstairs? And it's like, can you go to Walmart? Because I don't feel like going, but we need something for that. It's like, okay, so how do you, going from having like your own little space in the studio, like your own little desk, if you want to call it that, you have your easel, you have this stuff set up, and then coming home and then having different distractions. And also the procrastination that we all naturally have. Like, well, I'll start in 30 minutes, but you're watching a YouTube video that's 40 minutes. It's like, well, let me finish this video and then I'll start. Well, actually, let me eat, then I'll come back upstairs and then I'll start. Well, let me clean out this chair with all these clothes in it and then I'll start. And it's like, well, I'll just do it tomorrow in the morning. And it's kind of like, I feel like for me, it's easier to have a place that's just specific for that because it's like going to the gym. If you are making an effort to go to the gym, you're not just going to sit down and just wait for time to pass. You're like, okay, well, let me use this machine, let me stay here for an hour and get all this stuff accomplished and then go home. If you're working out in your room, it can be a little bit harder because you can take a break because you're already in this space that you have your bed right there. So for the fall, like I've signed up for classes, but I feel like it's still like up in the air of how it's really gonna work. They said it's gonna be half online and like half in person. So I guess with everything that you can write, that'll be online. But then everything that needs to be in person will be like critiques. Maybe we'll do it in person. Because last semester we ended up doing critiques over like Zoom and other like or like Microsoft Teams or something. So I made that work, but I don't know if we're going into it knowing that this stuff is going on. How are they like really making it like a difference? So I guess we'll know. I guess I'll get more emails as time goes. I've signed up for classes so far just because I do kind of want to stay on track with my degree plan and like graduation and stuff. But I actually kind of don't know how it's gonna go at all. But
like, how has all of this affected your thinking about pursuing art, you know, taking art classes and things like that?
I feel like art, I don't want to say for me, but I feel like art, like earlier, it's always this like exclusiveness of it. Only certain people can do it because only certain people like are afforded that opportunity to have time to get better as an artist. And because it's like, if you're better, then you can sell it. But if you're not good, then you have to wait till you are good. So it's like, how much time can you really afford to spend like hours on perfecting this craft when you can be spending these hours at work so you can like pay bills? So if you have money already or your family has, why don't you spend all day painting because it doesn't make a difference. But if you're like poor, can you spend all day painting? Probably not. So it's always like this kind of like frivolous thing about like art because we use art, we consume art daily, constantly we consume art, but I feel like in a way it's not as valued as something that's practical like welding or being a nurse or like something that's like that you could instantly put like a label on it. Okay, this is worth something because we need a nurse. A painting's nice and we like to look at it and we want it for this price, but it's not the hourly rate like is not as important as this. So it does feel like, do I need to like? I feel like a lot of artists do need to do something practical and just do it as a hobby and do it on the side. And that idea is still there. And I don't know. I don't know if I would say even more so with like COVID stuff, because it's like, if like what's gonna get cut off first? Is it gonna be teachers and nurses, or is it gonna be like an art painter? So like that is like a really real thought. I wouldn't say it's this way. Like I still want to do painting, but I am kind of thinking about how to make it work when something like disastrous like COVID-19 kind of happens. But I guess it's always been a thought for me, just because it's like, what if I'm older and I can't sell a painting that week, or something, like how do I make it work? But um I'll say for me, um COVID, like when I was first like starting back to paint, like I didn't paint for like maybe a month, and then I was like, okay, I need to get these paintings out, and it made me attack it more efficiently. And I feel like I did it like that. Like I didn't overthink what I was doing, but I was doing, I was working more intuitively. And I feel like that kind of helped me to trust my skill set. It's like, okay, like this kind of it looks like I know what I'm doing. So I guess I do know what I'm doing. And I feel like it forced me to learn how to trust myself with art. And I don't know, but that is a real thought of how does like a disaster like this kind of make you think about it. Because you might get a grant to make art, but that's not something that's like a stable, like that's not something that you can kind of hold, like, okay, this I could count on this every 2 weeks. It's kind of like I can count this is a good week, but what about the rest, like the 3 weeks out of the month that's our left? So
It's really challenging, isn't it? And there's so many thoughts that come in my mind about what you just said. And one of the things is, the problem is we need more people of color in the arts. But we understand what the arts have set up is very exclusive and very exclusionary. It's primarily been a certain kind of people. And art has always depicted history and our time. And what you've been talking about with your work is what you're doing is you're depicting what's right in front of you, what you're experiencing, what your friends are experiencing, your family is experiencing. That is valuable. That's so critical and so important for someone like you to do what you're doing. But the challenge is exactly what you said.
I feel like if you think about culturally how things are kind of set up, it's like, okay, if I'm the first person in my family to go to college, like extended, like my dad had training, my mom went to she had some years of college. But if I'm the first person to go and like really pursue something like, okay, like a degree, like you want painting, it's like, oh, like she college kind of doesn't, not to say that it doesn't matter, but it's like you want to college for that. And it's kind of like this voice is important, like in the art field, but it just has that other challenge of you have things kind of resting on you. Like if you're a first generation college student, but you're not going, like, okay, you're not going to be a doctor or a lawyer, or you're going to be a painter. It's like, okay, like kind of, not that it feels like it's not something that's counted, but it's like, okay, like it's not a real job.
Yeah, sure.
So it's kind of like if I'm the only one that's going to be like in college, and then my sister's going to go to college like later, but it's kind of, it has more stuff resting on you to like be successful. But we already know it's kind of like, I would say difficult to be successful as like a person of color artist, because there's only going to be, it's more of a select time that they're going to like choose you or go to you. Like when somebody asks me why don't I do more political things in my work, it's like, but I didn't hear you ask that to anybody else. So why was that directed towards me? It's kind of like, I kind of see how you value my art. You value this lens of, okay, what do you feel about police brutality? Okay, what do you feel about being a Black woman in media? How do they feel about you? How do you feel about people talking about you wearing this, and that? And it's like, okay, so this personal lens isn't as valuable to you as me talking about society at like large. So it's kind of like, this lens is important, but if we don't support these people who have these perspectives, it's kind of hard to expect that to, or them to grow as an artist. Because if I'm like focused on like making it, I can't just focus on making good art because I'm focused on, okay, can somebody see it that matters so then I can get big in a way? I don't know. But
so it's extremely challenging. What I do want to affirm though is the very act of you making art is a political act.
that's what I've said before. Like I was really like that after like that question was asking me why don't I make political art. I was like really thinking about it, and I was just like, the act of me painting is political in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Me, this image of like a Black couple as something worthy of being recognized is already like a whole statement. That's not talking about how does it feel that everybody thinks that Black households don't have fathers. It's not true, but how do you feel about it? It's like I don't have to feel a way about it because it's not true. It's not something that has weight to me because I know it's not true. It's like if you think about the history of Black women in America and how our work has been seen not valuable in a way. If you think about slavery and how these people had to work sun up to sundown with no pay, but they were getting profit off of them. So it's like this person's life is not valuable. It's only valuable in the sense of what they can provide for you directly, whether it's a child to be another worker, or is it how long can they work before they start breaking down? And it's like, if you think about the history of the Black woman in America and you think about the history of art, it's not seen as equal. So if I'm doing something that, if we talk about painting being frivolous because it's something that rich people can do and they could get better at because they have time to do that, versus like a Black woman having to like work to be seen as valuable, whether she's working at a job that nobody wants to provide for the family or something. It's kind of like me painting and me not painting about a Black trauma or Black pain, but about this girl holding hands with her little brother or her boyfriend or getting her hair braided. It's like, important. We don't care about your story. We don't care about this perspective. We care about how do you feel about police or how do you feel about Donald Trump being president? It's like, I don't feel good about it, but you should already know that I don't feel good about it. Do you feel good about it? It's like, I don't know.
But you're making art that you want to make. As a Black woman who's faced with unbelievable challenges, you are making valuable work because it's coming from you and you're being authentic about what you're making. And maybe someday you'll do that, but the pressure to have to do that to prove you're right for painting, it's a really warped capitalistic perspective. It really is. It's like you've got to prove yourself.
And prove why your thoughts are valid in a way.
Yeah, right.
If you have like an art show and you have, okay, we want to make an art show about dreams, just like dreams at night. And it's like, you're going to go to this list of people and it's like, okay, we need a diversity person. We need somebody to like make it so obvious that it's like, oh, this one type of person. It's like, okay, well, let's pick her. And she'll feel like she's a woman, she's Black, and sometimes she's queer. So we got all three of those and it's like in this moment. So it's like, you're not looking at this art piece as just an art. You're looking at this art piece from, okay, Black woman and it's meeting the criteria. So it's kind of like we go to the idea of who's like a default in America. We can think about, okay, white, male, like middle class, and it's kind of like you see that person and then they can kind of be who they want to be, whether they want to be like a hippie type, they want to be like a skater boy, they want to be like a motorcycle like dude. It's like they can be those different things, but they don't have, like they have less attached to them in a sense than if I were to go somewhere. It's like you have these attachments of, oh, she's ghetto, or she has an attitude, or she's mean. She's like, it has a different type of energy. So it's like, I can't really be a default. I have this label, this label, this label, this label. And when it's Black History Month, then you come and pull out a different part instead of all year long, you're just looking at this jar. Because when you see a picture of relationship, and you can tell that it's a Black couple. It's like, okay, well, this is a Black artist. This is a Black couple. They're thinking about this. It's not something that you can relate to instantly because you feel like it's a different world than where you're from. So it doesn't feel the same if you're checking off boxes to say that you have it than just looking for something that you like. Like if you have, okay, you're working at Google and you have this meeting and you have this team of people around the table and you look and it's like, okay, well, we all have, it's just all white people or it's all men. It's like, okay, let's get somebody else in here so it's like it's more inclusive. But it's like you have that person here, but you're not asking that person for ideas. You're not asking that person for input. They're kind of just sitting there at the statue so you can say that you have that. You're not really looking at this person as a person, but you're looking at this person like as that Black person that with that token that we need. And I feel like with art, it's especially like we have to prove why we're there, but we also have to prove why these stories are valid. Like if you look at Kerry James Marshall work, and I remember him saying, or I was watching like a talk that he had of a university or something, and he was just saying that he's not making art for himself, but he's making art for this body to be seen in this space. When he was younger, there were like bodies other than this one particular image. And he was like, well, I want to be here. I want to be a painter so I can paint like images of people who look like me to be here. And he's painting images not personally for himself, but something that he wants other people to see. And if we think about Jordan Castile, and she paints images of like Black men and Black boys in a very like quiet space, and it's just in a way proving that they're not these just inherent aggressive beings. And I feel like with both of those like types of ideas, we're kind of like proving to like people that okay, we're human too. We deserve to be respected. We deserve to be, you should empathize with us. And it's like with my work, I'm not trying to prove to you that I'm a good person or that I'm an innocent person or that I deserve to be this, and that. Because if you don't already know that when just looking at my work or seeing me, then that's a problem that you have to address. It's not my job to prove to you of something. It's your job to not have that thought inherently when you go to look at something. And that's kind of like what I don't want the focus of my art to, like I'm not making art so then it could be this image of this Black girl in the space. It's just like I'm making this image of art because it's just me in this space, and whatever comes with that does, but that's not my focus of proving that I deserve to be here because I just deserve to, because I do.
Yeah. I would love for you to talk about, as much as you feel comfortable to talk about process of getting in this show in California, what was that was like, and being interviewed and all that happened.
I feel like that was such a at every like step, it was kind of like I applied for the show and I was like, okay, well, I want to apply to, like I had to, it was like a class thing. I had to apply for 3 different opportunities. And then when I saw that one, I was like, well, this looks like something that my art is like relevant to. It was a show about like COVID-19, Corona, and making art during like this time and how it all affects us. And I was like, well, I made a piece that's kind of like, it kind of touches on that idea. So I'll submit it and see where it goes. But I just thought this is in California. It's probably a lot of people submitting, so I probably won't get picked. And I submitted my application, and then a few weeks later, I got an email, and it was like, "Congratulations, you're at work for shows." And I was like, "Oh, y'all looked at like for some reason, I'm just thinking that people are like just scrolling through the applications, and then like it's kind of hard to catch like a juror's eye. So when that happened, I was like, oh, they caught their eye and they decided that they wanted to come to California. I was like, wow. I'm like a real artist. Because the thing is, like I said earlier, when it's like accessible and then it's like somebody seeing it and wanting to know more about it and wanting to like see it in person or wanting to be in this space with other art pieces. And when that happened, it's like this idea of not just painting as like a hobby, but actually being a painter, like as a profession. It's like, oh, like this is kind of serious. Like it's an art show. Like only real artists getting art shows or something, because you know how hard it is to like get accepted art shows. So when that happened, I was like, wow, really? Had to learn how to send it off. You helped me with that. And that was like it was like overwhelming because I am like a student or like an amateur, if you want to say, and it's like, I don't know how to send off a painting, but I don't want to look like I don't know how to send off a painting. So it's kind of like, I don't want to be seen as like oh, they don't know what they're doing. It might have been a mistake to like look into the show. So I don't know. One thing I will say, I don't know if art classes need to like include this, but like how to ship off for artwork. I don't know if that needs to be a whole other class, but how to like actually ship an artwork and like, because if you search it, you know you're not supposed to use like those little peanuts. But if you're a young artist, you don't know anything. Peanuts probably would be good to protect it in a long journey. It's like you don't think about the person opening up and then this. But if you talk to somebody who knows how to ship a work, it's like, okay, we use bubble wrap. It's like, oh. So I feel like, I don't know, I feel like shipping like artwork needs to be a class. But that was overwhelming. We ended up getting it shipped off. And then when they asked to interview me, I was like, okay, like I guess they want to know more about the artwork, which I was just like you want to know more about when somebody wants to know more about your opinion, like getting an interview is kind of, it feels like, oh, like it's kind of serious. Like they value your opinion enough to like ask questions and want other people to know. Like they don't just want to have a conversation with you, but they want other people want to know the information as well. So that was kind of, I don't know. Like even now, I feel like I'm kind of rambling like a lot in this conversation, but it's like somebody wants to hear some of what I have to say. So when I did the interview, and then he ended up telling me that I got first place. So that was like already, that's like 3 different things. Like me getting accepted to the show, me being asked to be interviewed, and then getting first place. I surely didn't think that was gonna happen, just because I was like, okay, these are a lot of like pieces in this show. I saw that was like a first, second, and third. But I was just like I'm just glad to be a part of the group. I'm just glad to be a player on the team. So when he said I got first place, I honestly didn't know how to respond, because I was like, oh, y'all liked it enough to like, not over the other ones, but y'all liked it enough to like give it like a award. So I don't know, like moments like those are just affirming to let me know that I am like on the right track, or that I'm doing something that's relevant, not even just only to myself, but to other people that can connect to it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Are there any other thoughts that you have that you'd maybe like to share with anybody who might be listening?
I don't know if I have any thoughts like specific. I would just say that if you are watching this or listening to this or reading this, and you have an interest in art or in any field, I would just say to really like pour your all into it, but not just all of your energy, but really think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. Because I can pour all the energy I can into art, but if I'm not thinking about how I can be better at it, or how I can like really like feel it the way that I need to feel it, then it's kind of like not as much of a point. So I would just say, really think about what you're doing and apply everything from your life. Like with me, I'll read. If I watch movies, and I'll try to think about how this stuff like makes me feel. Like if you have that certain scene in a movie, and every time that it comes, like you just feel like you want to cry. You don't cry, but you kind of feel like that heavy like feeling in your heart. Or if you read a passage in the book, you have to reread it a couple times. That's the kind of feeling that I try to like record, and try to think about recreating it. Okay, so and as you make something, you could kind of realize that you have complete control over everything. I feel like it's in how you can make the canvas and wrap the canvas, or like you make the stretcher and then you pick the type of paint that you're using, and you pick how you get to compose it. I think it can be really it can touch people in a way that they didn't expect it to, just because maybe they haven't seen anything like that before or anything before. And I feel like that's really important to have.
Thank you for that. That's really insightful.
Okay. Nice.
Thank you so much for taking the time again.
Yeah, this was the fact that we asked the same questions, but I feel like it went like so differently than the first time.
Yeah.
So fun as always.
Yeah. I'm so I'm so happy for you and I'm so proud of you. Really.
Thank you. I don't know whenever like somebody says they're proud of me, like has seen like the journey. Because I feel like you've seen the journey because I was with Mountain like you seen my work before and you seen like even the commission from last year and how we had the struggle of going through that.
Yeah.
They really kind of seen like the journey of me getting different um accolades or just like you seen the growth. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and you are getting accolades. You have all along the way. So just soak that in. Thank you so That's a great laugh. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Like this was a nice little song.
Yeah.